Good morning, everyone. Four of our kids are in camp, so it brings back memories of being in camp myself. And one of the fond memories of being in camp as a kid was in Brooklyn. We never saw water, except in the bathtub, of course. But when we go to camp, we actually had a lake in camp. We took out boats and things like that. But one of the simple pleasures that I recall, we used to like to stand at the lake and pick up pebbles and throw them into the water and skid them into the water and watch the ripple effect of the little pebbles as they would go out and out and out and out. And in life, it's very true that sometimes a little pebble, a little act, a small deed, we may think it's small, but it could have this ripple effect that we could never know how far the impact could be from that little good deed that we do. In this week's parsha, we find the verse that talks about the daily offerings in the temple. Every morning and every evening there was a sacrifice. Today we don't bring sacrifices. We have morning and evening prayers every day to reflect and to commemorate the daily offerings in the temple as a substitute. However, in the temple there was a morning and evening sacrifice. And there's an interesting discussion in the Medrash. The Medrash says, I don't know if you ever thought about this question, but what's the most important verse in the whole Torah? So there are three opinions. One opinion says the most important verse is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Second opinion says no, the most important verse in the Torah is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. The third opinion is that it's in this week's parsha. Es hakeves echad tasa b'boker, es hakeves hasheni tasa b'nimah. You should bring one offering in the morning, one offering in the afternoon, as they did in the temple every day, 2 communal offerings. The question is, we can understand faith in God, one God, that's monotheism, the basis of Judaism. Love your neighbor as yourself. We can understand that's the most important verse. But why would the third opinion say to bring a daily offering in the morning and afternoon is the most important verse in the Torah? And one view and interpretation is that he's not arguing with the first two opinions, he's explaining the first two opinions. He's saying, yes, believe, have faith in one God. Love your neighbor as yourself. But these are big commandments. How do you come to love every person like yourself? How do you have true trust and faith in God? That everything comes from Hashem and never doubt Hashem's controlling and running the world. So he says, you know how you do it? Make one sacrifice in the morning, one sacrifice in the afternoon. Meaning to say, do one act of kindness to your fellow man in the morning and one small sacrifice in the afternoon. If you do that day in, day out, that will lead to the fulfillment of the mitzvah to love your neighbor as yourself. The same thing. Make one sacrifice for Hashem in the morning, one in the afternoon. Don't think you have to do something monumental, life-transforming, world-shattering. No, it's those little deeds every day, the daily offerings, the daily sacrifices, the little times, acts we go out of our way for another person or to do a mitzvah for Hashem. It's those daily actions that amount and ultimately lead to the fulfillment of these big commandments of faith in God and love of our fellow man. It's a story about this rabbi in Israel who worked with teens at risk, kids who went off the path from Judaism and were involved in drugs and alcohol, and tragically had a 3-year-old son that died. And it was a terrible tragedy, and the family was mourning the death of this 3-year-old boy and sitting Shiva. And during the Shiva, a group of his students, these teens, showed up to comfort their rabbi. And they loved him very much, but these kids were completely non-observant, and some of them had ponytails, earrings, tattoos, clearly off the observant path. And they sat with their rabbi, and when they finished, they said, Rabbi, we wanted to do something in memory of your son. And so we spoke amongst ourselves, and we decided that this Shabbat, during the Shiva, we're all going to observe Shabbat in memory of your son. And the rabbi hugged them and kissed them and thanked them for this gesture of kindness, of observing Shabbos in memory of his son. When the students left, there was another rabbi there who turned to him and said, I was very disappointed. He said, why were you disappointed? He said, I thought they were going to say they're going to start keeping Shabbos permanently, ongoing, for the rest of their lives. And then when they said for one Shabbos they're going to keep Shabbos, they're going to go back to not observing Shabbos, I was very let down, I was disappointed. And this rabbi who worked with these students looked at him, he says to him, do you know what I would give to have my son back for one more Shabbos? Do you know what that would mean to me? He says, do you know what it means to Hashem that these kids who haven't kept Shabbos in years will come back home for one Shabbos to be with Hashem? Never underestimate every small deed, the value, the infinite value of every gesture, of every kindness, of every good mitzvah. And you'll never know, and one could never know, how large of a ripple effect and an impact each and every good deed we can do has.